Good morning and welcome to Focus on South Texas. I'm Grace White and we're talking about money this morning and finances and why it's so important, especially for women, to get involved. Brooklynn, Chandler, Willy, the president of the Texas Financial Advisory Group, is joining me. Thanks so much for being here, Brooklynn. We appreciate your time. Let's first talk about those two words, women, and money. Why do the two, in your mind, go together?
Well, we know how to spend it and we know how to save it, but sometimes we just, as women, aren't very good at investing money. And I think that we've seen a change in society. And just last week, an article came out saying that of households that women have now surpassed and become the primary breadwinner. And so that we're making more, but we're still being very standoffish on investing money and taking control of our financial future.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think there's lots of reasons, but really to boil it down, I think the first thing is procrastination. It's easier to do something else. And
I think we're all guilty of that at one time or another, putting off the budget, putting off the finances.
Right. And you get busy with your everyday life, and as long as the kids are clean and fed and husband's taken care of and bills are paid, we're really good at paying the bills. That's fine. But to really stop and take inventory of what's going on and what your money's doing, how to invest it, and educate yourself is just, it takes time, and sometimes we're very short on time as women.
And I know you have a few things you wanted to highlight here. We were talking about the lack of confidence that you mentioned, thinking about small stuff rather than the big things and relying on others. So what can people do to start planning right now to make sure their finances are going to be okay in 5 and 10 years down the road?
Yeah, well, I think that you've got to start. We've got to start somewhere. So that's the first thing, whether that's with your 401k with your work, or whether it's an outside investment. You need to start educating yourself. Don't be afraid to ask. Find an advisor you trust. That's huge. So stop thinking small and think a bigger picture at this point. So we have several tips on my website. I know we're going to talk more here, but on texasfinancialadvisory.com, maybe some things that we're not going to get covered, but you could go on there, and I have all these places of how we can just light the fire and get started. So.
What are some good questions when you get face-to-face with that advisor? It can be intimidating sometimes because you oftentimes assume that person knows so much more about money and finances than you do. What questions should you ask?
Well, taking a step back, I think that women primarily depend on their husband to pick the advisor, okay? And there is a statistic that said that 70% of widows change advisors after their spouse passes away.
Really? That's interesting.
And statistically speaking, typically women are the widows. And Wells Fargo did a survey and found that of couples that were married about the same age, and so the woman tend to be more likely to be the widow, but would live an additional 8 to 10 years after her spouse passed. Mm-hmm. So we have all those things to take in consideration. So when you're going to interview with your, a potential advisor, that's what you need to think about it. You need to think about, I can interview this person, and if I don't like them, it's not a good fit, then I can go to another person. So it's your choice of where you're going to go. But you want to figure out, do they actually care about you? Are they getting it, or are they going to sell you something that's a cookie cutter plan based on what their company is telling them to sell?
That may not be best for you
as
your
an individual.
Right.
Yeah. So that's huge. Why are they going to care about you? And I require at my office that if it's a husband wife, if it's a two-person family, that both husband and wife need to come in. And the excuse of, well, my wife she's not interested, or this makes her eyes glaze over. That's okay. Come in, I'll make her interested.
There you go. I like that.
You've got to get involved, and because this affects both of you guys.
Sure.
So, the first thing you want, not how you should invest. That's of course important, but why do they care about you and your money is the key question you want to ask that advisor that you're meeting with.
So get to know them as a person.
Exactly.
And talk about taking inventory. I thought that was a really interesting point. How do you do that? How do you take inventory of everything you have?
This is a great way. You've asked me how to start. Well, maybe this is how you get started, okay? On my website, we have an inventory form. You go print it off, texasfinancialadvisory.com. Okay, so this is crucial. we have turned into a society of logging onto computers to get our information, right? It slowly but surely is gone with statements in the mail. And I see that a lot of folks, maybe the husband takes the role of doing the investment, so he knows the username, the password. He understands all that, and the other thing is they change all the time. You know, that's so frustrating.
You
get
have
on
to
there
change
like,
the password
yeah,
every
it's been
6 weeks,
45
and you can't
days,
remember
and,
it. I know.
Yeah, so we need
It's
to
happened to
have
me.
some sort of written list of how to access those accounts. So, and I hate to be kind of negative, but you know, this is super important. If if there's a tragedy and your husband passes away unexpected, or you know, we all pass. The other thing is that you know, what if there's a divorce, right? And assets are being hidden. If you don't know what's there or what you have saved or what your husband has saved, you know, then you may not get the fair share during your divorce. So, I mean, that is just basic. You don't have to understand what the investments are, but you need to know how to get access to those accounts. You know, the other thing are your wills and your trust. I mean, whatever those estate planning documents, your tax return, you need to be able to know how to access those, either your computer or have a hard copy of those, of that paperwork.
Is there a master list out there that you can go to, or should you call banks that you think, you know what, I think I had an account there 10 years ago. I can't remember if we closed it out. Should you call, or is there a master list?
There is no big database out there, especially with like life insurance. That's something that's very crucial. You know, I see people that come in and they're maybe wrapping up their parents' estate, and they're like, I could have sworn my mom had a life insurance policy she took out 20, 30 years ago.
Right.
And there is no just 1-800 number to call to figure out if there's these policies around or a bank account. You know, so it's crucial that you take the initiative and write it down, have a running list, update the passwords, have the conversation with your husband. I mean, taking it to the other end of the spectrum, if your husband's the only one in charge of accessing the accounts and making the decisions, well, and you're in charge of cooking and making, you know, making the family dinners and things like that, well, if you wrote down all the ingredients in that favorite recipe, can your husband jump in there and make that recipe for you? I'm sure he could do it. It's not going to be exactly like you would do it yourself. So you've got to think about, you know, tick for tack. If something's to happen to that person that is in charge of making those decisions, you have to know at least where to go, and then you can hire an advisor to help you along the way.
Got it. And your next tip, I think, is also so important. Save, save, save. How do you start saving? How much do you need?
Well, that's another conversation that we're going to have, because we need to figure out, what are you saving for? Okay, is the goal to save for retirement, which is typically what my clientele tell me. Is the goal to save for purchase of a home? I mean, what are we saving for? And that lets us dictate how much we want to save. Now, once you save, that's where we get into the discussion about how to invest the money. You know, you want that money to work for you, and so that's where you want to get the education, as much education as possible, on the different investment tools available to you. But you know, we have different guiding, different ways to guide you. If you're in your 20s and you have a 401k plan at your company, I don't care if you're living paycheck to paycheck, take part, you know, and especially if you have a company match, at least put as much in there as the company's going to match you. That is free money.
Free money.
Okay?
Might as well take that.
So that's for anybody, but you know, typically in the 20s, that's a great way to get started. Now, in your 30s, you want to kind of assess this and say, okay, in retirement, am I going to have a pension? Am I going to, if not, then I maybe need to start beefing up my retirement accounts. If your company doesn't offer it, you can go open up an IRA at the bank or with me, or, you know, there's ways that you can save in retirement without necessarily having a company that provides you a retirement account. In your 40s, you need to be putting at least 20% away of your salary, and because that's your last push. So, and typically you're probably at your peak that you're making, that you're earning in your 40s or 50s. So you want to put as much as you can away at that time. And hopefully you've had debt paid off. You're not have a big debt burden that you're carrying into retirement. So,
well, thank you so much, Brooklyn, Chandler, Willy, for being here. We certainly appreciate your time, and we want to leave people with your website for more information on all these tips she's talked about this morning. Their website, www.texasfinancialadvisory.com. The help is free there for the first consultation, and they would love to help you get your finances in order. Stay with us. We'll be right back.